Okay, everybody, it's Marco here with Porter Pickups, and you checked out Brian's top 5 pedals, and so we thought it would be fun if we took a look at my top 5 pedals. And I really thought that was a cool idea, and I looked at my pedals for a long time, and I'm always ripping up my pedal board. You can hear the Velcro in the other room, and I'm making a racket. But it seems like these 5 are kind of like the central kind of thing, and I could do whatever I need to with these. Bass, guitar, you know, even running like keys through it. Like these do a lot of cool things. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is kind of like the brain of the whole operation and what gets the most use, even if it's just one or any combination of these or my other pedals, but it's the HX Stomp. Those of you that are hip to this know how powerful this thing is. A lot of ins and outs, so when I do use 2 amps, I can do that. I have 2 amps set up at home, 2 smaller tube amps. And I love that it's got like the effects loop section over here, so you can run a lot of these other things over there in stereo. And the one annoying thing is like the power supply, it's like either too big or the little cable is too short, so you need like an extension cord no matter what. But I really love this thing, and I felt like I didn't give it a chance the first few times I used it. The patches that I would dial, and this is talking like back in the day when I first encountered one of these. But now I feel like the patches sound way better, and I listen to some of the old ones, and I'm like, oh, okay, I am getting better at this. So if you have one of these and you're not super thrilled yet, just give it some time. They're pretty awesome things. It's got MIDI stuff too. But why this gets used the most, because of all of the ins and outs, and it's also got headphones, so I can play it at odd hours and whatnot. And this just kind of like, if you've got this on the board, you've got a tuner on the board too, and you know, you can add a weird compressor here, there, you know, just whatever doesn't fit on the board, it has a good sounding version of it. And also like a noise gate, you know, like that's another thing, using single coils and loving single coils. This has got a pretty good noise gate on it. You can tweak it a little bit. It's not uncommon for me to have gain pedals and be running at a volume where I need another one, and then I like the honorable mention, I guess, would be the TC Electronics Sentry, which, and thanks to my buddy Daniel too, who like, I only know anything about any of this stuff because of him, like running it through the effects loop, and oh, it sounds better, and you can do this, and all of that good stuff. So he was a big help with this and all of my pedal stuff. I guess like the second pedal that I use for just about everything and is this JHS Clover. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Like, it's easy to confuse this with the Bonsai because they're both like same shades of green, but this is just like a preamp, and I don't know exactly what kind of preamp, but I know it's modeled after one of those old like Boss clip-on ones, like I think the like FA2 or PA2 or something like that. But this thing, you know, it's easy to see like, oh, what does this do? But it really just slams your amp, but it's also kind of got an EQ. It's almost like the best, if you like gain, like the best sounding boost you've ever heard. Like this really can make your amp way louder than it's supposed to be. And I usually set it pretty aggressively to where it really starts to kind of make everything clip. And it sounds kind of like the amp's kind of blown up a little bit. Haven't blown an amp yet. I've definitely blown a couple speakers. Just my own fault, but this thing just sounds so brutal, if I may. But even like using single coils and you're used to humbucker response, you can kind of dial in some of that stuff too. It's got a low cut on the side if there's too much low end for you, and I think I've even used this as like a standalone bass amp, just going into like a Zoom recorder to do bass stuff, and in a pinch, you know, just to be able to get some clean guitar tracks or drum tracks, I think. But so this always gets pulled off, it always ends up back on. You can see there's like glow tape on it for when it's really dark. We like to play in the dark, and yeah, this thing just stays on. And then when I need to get just a little bit crazier or a different kind of gain, I'll look to this Mythos High Road Fuzz. And I think this is a silicon fuzz, pretty simple, just got the output. And this is definitely one where you're going to want to kind of play with your volume knob. Like even if you're using humbuckers, you might even want to roll it off just a touch, but you really start to get these very interesting kind of break-up-y sounds and not necessarily like straight up fuzz. Like this cleans up really well, and I don't know, even almost as like a clean boost at times. Like, I mean, you're almost all the way off of the volume, but like such a good clean boost. Like amp setup, pretty loud. This, you know, ripping, and then you can just a little bit of volume on there, and it sounds really good. I do notice that when I run it through like the noise gate, though, you can kind of like that buffer in there kind of squashes a little bit. So this likes to be first, you know, and then I'll run these into the late HX stomp, and I feel like between the both of them, you can kind of maybe offset any weird impedance stuff. But this I usually will plug in first and then into that, and not a tuner, because there's a tuner on there, which sometimes makes problems when you have to rip it off and throw a tuner on there. So, but it's on there. It's got it covered. And then I guess we'll start with the exciting stuff. I started getting into the Chase Bliss world, and this was kind of my first pedal in that kind of realm. And I even it was back when they were still doing their dealer networks, and I went and found one of Porter Pickup's first dealers over kind of in the Portland area, I think, and Centaur Guitar. So shout out to them. But I tracked it down from them on Reverb from their store, so it's kind of a convoluted thing. But this thing is kind of like my go-to delay, and I guess well, maybe this one is like the Desert Island pedal, you know, because this one can do the delay thing, and you can train it to where it's like a super long delay that is just, you know, you in the past, and then you're just playing on top of what you laid down, and then you come back on the next round, it'll like take your guitar track, and for like 3 minutes, like it can play it back to you, and you can control how it does that. But then you've also got reverbs that you can make, or I'm sorry, delays that you can make into kind of like pseudo reverbs and kind of like modulation, tape modulation stuff, and even kind of like ring modulation stuff. But this one, I remember I got it, and learning to do all the ramp stuff, I just recorded a bunch of noise, and even then, this is still such a big part of that. I don't know, when you're just trying to, you know, throw paint on the wall, like this thing is so cool for that, and you're ready to stop playing guitar, but this thing just kind of draws you back in, and you know, like literally you're about to unplug it, and then the memory plays back what you just played, and you're like, oh well, I'm going to chop that up. And this, at the beginning of like a Chase Bliss chain, you can then turn into varying degrees of, you know, because this is kind of like its own little unit pumping along audio, and then you can pump it into all those crazy other pedals. And this is a mono pedal, but after this I will run stereo into the Mood 2, and this is a nice lovely little fuchsia kind of pedal, and I usually use it for reverb, and then kind of end capping the looper kind of functionality of that into this looper. So I'll catch something out of the habit into this, and then chop it up, and then you know, have got two very cool like layers of kind of like pad stuff, and then you can just play guitar on top of that, you know, because you can turn the mix all the way down. But this has the really cool clock sample rate. It sounds like you're turning down the fidelity on the world. The you know, everything sounds like everything's slowing down around you, where it gets really high pitchy frequency, only dogs can hear kind of stuff. Reverb and a delay, and it's a cool ping pong delay if you stereo it. So it'll bounce between the two amps, and just such a cool effect that if you haven't tried it, it's such a fun thing, even though it kind of ruins you, because once you hear it, you're like, okay, I gotta have the stereo thing, but it's just more cables, or crazy specific cables, long cables running to amps and effects loops. But that's why I like that this has the effects loop on it. So I can just run the cables out of that into the amps. If I don't use that, I'll just go straight in, and then these will go in to like a splitter. So I'll split the signal that way. But this thing just does a lot of cool stuff that, I don't know, also just kind of a Swiss Army knife, and can cover a lot of ground. I mean, between these two Chase Bliss pedals and like, say, the compressors, and even some of the drives on the Stomp, you know, you can make it sound really kind of whatever you're going for, cover a lot of ground, or, you know, even just using some of the reverbs or some of the cool stereo stuff there on the Stomp is really cool. I guess, you know, just because of the stereo functionality, you're able to do a lot more cool stuff with this, but that's not to say that you can do a lot of wild stuff just running straight into the amp. But that's just kind of like when I can have it the way that I want it, and I you know, have all the cabling and everything, and it's kind of a nice setup. But those are kind of like my top 5, and I think I can cover everything I need to with those pedals. And yeah, thanks for checking out this video. I hope it was enjoyable. See you guys next time.